Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dr. Cammy and Karen Go Keto, where we are working from transitioning from a standard American diet into a keto lifestyle and lately carnivore. And I'm here with the wonderful Mike Collins. This is, I think, our third or fourth. I think our fourth discussion that we've had together around me pulling off of sugar, working with my sugar addiction, and going carnivore and how that helps with my cravings. And last week we had a discussion and the decision was made that I was going to not go on the GLP-1 agonist and I was going to work on my caffeine. So this is a hard thing for me to say, but I did go on the GLP-1 agonist. I went on Zepbound. I took 2.5 milligrams sub-Q on March 8th. And we're going to talk today a little bit about my thought process and what was going on around that, and a lot, I guess, about addiction, because this is where it is. And I've been doing plus or minus with the caffeine. I'm definitely drinking less caffeine. I'm not drinking any regular coffee at all, and I'm drinking 1 or 2 decaf coffees a day, so I couldn't pull off of that completely. But I'm here, I'm taking account for it. And we discussed before we signed on, Mike and I talked a little bit about the 4 agreements and being impeccable with your word. So I feel bad about that because I was not impeccable with my word. And I said to Mike, oh, tell him what you said about addiction and lying.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's addiction, I mean, it's not lying. It's a back door. It's an escape, it's a way out of your. You really do. All addicts mean what they say when they say it. But, having access to your addiction or your ability, whatever, is more important. And your promises go out the window pretty quickly, whether it's money from your parents or stealing or whatever to keep close to your supply or whatever. In this case, we talked about it, but I think I need to preface this with that. This is going to be ongoing for many, many years. These GLP-1 agonists, the Ozempics and the Manjaros and the et cetera's are going to be, they're not going to back down. The pharmacy companies are not going to back down. And I akin this to what we've dealt with over the years with people that have had bariatric surgery or were contemplating bariatric surgery. And a lot of the folks that we've had bariatric surgery have been able to hack their stomach, whether the sleeve or whatever it is, and they had a quarter of their stomach and they started drinking sugar and eating ice cream and were able to literally gain all their weight back because their addiction was never cured. They never really solved their addiction issue, and it didn't matter what their stomach was like. And I see this similar thing happening here when people, I just read a study yesterday. Hopefully I can find it and get it over to you, Doc. But, basically the average of people taking these products, the GLP-1 agonists, is 2 years. It's supposed to be a lifetime thing, but everybody seems to average getting off it in 2 years. And a great, great majority of people gain their weight back. It's a great study. It's peer-reviewed. And so there's a lot of analogies to the bariatric and these drugs when you don't solve the addiction issue, okay? And that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about mostly, at this juncture, your decision-making process, how you felt and why you felt this was something you wanted to do. So maybe I'll just turn it back over to you after my little preface there, and you can fill us in. I mean, what people want to know, because they're seeing the advertisements, they're seeing the thin stars, they're seeing and I'm going to use this word in quotes. I'm not a big air quotes guy, but easier, and this is an AA saying, this is a 12-step saying, easier, softer way. Okay. So just from there forward, tell us how you were feeling. We had made a commitment and you decided against it. And obviously you're right, your prerogative, but let's let the folks in, what you've been amazing at, letting the folks in on your emotional state and your feelings around making that decision.
Okay. So, we made the commitment, and then for the next 2 or 3 days after that, I was eating carbs and eating off plan. So that's the part that I think we really need to work on between the two of us, is why was I doing that? Because I had the Zepbound in my refrigerator and I knew that it was there, and it had been sitting there for like a week. And I didn't want to take it because I was really afraid that that's just going to be another addiction. I'm just going to move it over from there to there. And that's the part that scared me. So I didn't do it. But then when we made the commitment, I was really afraid of going without the carbs. I didn't think I could do it without the help because I've been trying to do it. And I've been binging every 3 to 4 weeks. And I was thinking that I've been doing this keto diet for over 18 months. I haven't lost any weight and I'm still binging. And so my goal is to go 90 days without a binge. And I just was feeling like I wasn't able to do it on my own because the cravings were still coming. Even though I was on this carnivore diet, they were much better and much improved. And my focus is better and my energy is better and my sleep is better. But I was still doing that binging. And so the plan is for me to do the Zepbound, and I'm not quite sure. It's for, me to figure out or us to decide together, or I could talk to my friend who's a compounding pharmacist. I think the doses that are out there right now are too high for people. And I think that's why they go off it, because they get so sick and just don't feel like eating. And after a couple of years of not feeling like eating, they want to feel like eating again. So they go off of it. Because I'm already feeling some of the effects of not wanting to eat, but I was hungry last night and I went to bed hungry last night. So I'm interested in microdosing it and just staying at either 2.5 or dropping it down even lower, or maybe even potentially using it intermittently to kind of just help me get off the carbs so I can go 90 days without the carbs, because I want the carbs out of my system. I feel that if they're out of my system for long enough, I'll be willing and able to start doing some of this other work that we need to do to look at why is it that I have to soothe myself with these chemicals that my body is so dependent on for so long.
Yeah. Well, look, there's not a lot. Two things. One, let me disclaim this a little bit. You guys have to realize that Dr. Cammy is an MD and she can do this herself. So this is not sometimes an option that you guys are going to have, especially microdosing. You're going to have to go to some special specialists, and we can have some of that information if this gets that far. So that one thing. But the bottom line is I came up as an abstinence-based guy. This is a very relevant story. And, if you use Suboxone or Methadone, you were not, healed. Even if you used antidepressants, you were not recovered or in recovery, theoretically. I did believe it then. But as the opioid crisis progressed, I started to see people who were using Suboxone and not dying from a fentanyl, shot or something. And so I do believe in harm reduction. And I do believe in some medications to help folks through addictive processes, always with experts. Let's also qualify and quantify that, always with experts. And so your thought process is not irrational or irregular. The combination of the things that you have to, I think, process with the death of your sons and, and one of the things, people always get down on me, but I think you're experiencing it pretty heavily here, and other people do too, is the caffeine. I had an Olympian, the same exact thing happened. The woman was a chiropractor. She was, had a couple of kids, and she had, she was still thin and swimming, but she couldn't get off the sugar for the life of her. And the caffeine was keeping the sugar cravings alive, even a small amount, decaf, as you said. And so there's a lot of factors in this addiction, that start to surface, and they're underlying too. They don't always come up as the problem. They come up as free-floating or free-formed anxiety. And then you use the caffeine with the decaf with the little sugar in it, and then you binge or whatever, just to shut that shame brain down, to shut that I feel bad about myself down. And you're not totally wrong on the idea that if you can get the carbohydrates out of your system for a long period of time, then you can move forward. The thing about the people that I've researched for the microdosing is relevant, and the effect of this is important. And I don't there is way little enough, not enough evidence for this yet, but many people experience they want to stop drinking or they drink a lot less, they stop gambling when they ingest these GLP-1 agonists, right? And I personally believe, just like sugar and all drugs in general, that the effect on the mind, the effect on the brain is really what's helping. Yes, there is physical locking up the stomach and stuff, but I do believe it's this effect on the brain that is helping folks to lose the weight. And so is there a combination where the two can, where abstinence and these two things as you transition, like in a Suboxone, like in a methadone? Possibly, you know what I mean? It's not an irrational thought process or compilation of thought processes. Again, I'm one of those hardcore, and I get a lot of grief for this, one of those hardcore abstinence-based guys. And I don't know the answer completely. One thing I do know is that the weight, which people struggle with, is not the answer, or thinking about the weight is not the answer. It's more about the emotional stuff. And I think your approach is that if you can get the carbohydrates out of your system completely for 30 or 60, better 90 days, then you can drop the agonist, you can drop the GLP-1s and continue your work. That is what I, believe now as, an evolution of a recovering purpose, and from anonymous to, on public and stuff. I think we have to dig a little deeper emotionally. You know what I mean? Like, why are you doing this? Is it for the weight? It's always for the weight at the beginning, but I think you're far enough along to maybe answer that question. Is there more, Do you feel something coming up when you are binging? Like, is there something that's bothering you that you need to numb in that process? You know what I mean? As you're approaching whatever, a week or 2 weeks abstinent?
Well, it almost feels like it has to do, I think, with me. It has to do with human being versus human doing. That's part of it for me. And the other thing that comes into it is like self-acceptance, like acceptance of who I am. And I almost feel like if it's like as time goes by, like things will happen that I don't really feel, that I don't really accept as, that I don't find acceptable with my actions or behaviors. And then, they'll build, and then it just will like build up. And I don't get enough of the soothing, even though I'm trying and I'm actively doing things. I journal, and this morning I was sitting in the jacuzzi. It was cold and rainy, and I'm like, I'm going to run up there and sit in my jacuzzi and sit in the sauna. And I did. And I'm journaling. I'm not journaling as much, but I'm journaling now more. I'm journaling my days. Since I started the GLP-1 Agonist and doing some journaling there. And so I'm doing all those things, and I have the time. By grace of God, I have the time. Right now I'm not working, 60 hours a week. I have the time to do these things.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like it's like a buildup. But the other part too, that is that, like, when we said we weren't going to when I said I wasn't going to go on it, and the next day I went and was eating carbs, that was total addictive behavior. That was just total, like, I think when shortly after I said I wasn't going to do it, I decided I was going to do it, because then that's when I started binging, because I was like, okay, well, let's get my last few carbs in before I go 90 days without carbs. And that's what really scares me, because if I keep that mentality, then in 90 days, I'm just going to start my carbs again. And I don't want to do that. I really want us to figure out, why is it that it's so far back? And I think a lot of it has to go with how, when you have parents, right? When anybody has parents and you grow up in an environment and you don't know any other environment, right? Like, you're just in this environment. So this is how you think life is as you grow up in your family. I mean, you get out into school and you see how things are different or whatever. But I just really felt like growing up in my family that the way things were that you did things in order to look good, and you were a human doing, and that's what was acceptable. And if you didn't do it well, then that wasn't good enough. And so I think that was a lot of reasons why I would soothe myself early, because I had a lot of anxiety over not succeeding and not excelling.
Right.
And yet, the more, and so then I just became a hamster on a wheel where I would just excel and excel and excel as best as I could. And then when I fell short, which would usually come in the form of something verbally that my mother would say, very interesting woman, an amazing woman. She raised 7 kids. She wrote a book, just an amazing woman. But, and we learned that in NLP. You don't say but, you say and.
Okay.
So she's an amazing woman. And she also had mixed signals coming to me a lot, about how maybe I could have done better here or it wasn't perfect. But the reason why excelling was so important is because it made her look good. And as a narcissist, it was all about it was all about her and what you could do to make her look good. And so when I fell short, there was a lot of anxiety there for me, and soothing myself with sugar, I found, which was very pleasing and very loving and very, this terrible chemical, which I came to embrace for many decades, was the way that I would go about taking care of that.
So I want to talk about that in just a second, but I want to talk about this, what you described as a feeling, I want to get all my carbs in before I whatever. What is that about? Tell me what you're feeling when you're feeling like it's grief underlying. I think you're going to grieve the loss of the lover you just described or the self-soothing method you just described. But how does it feel when you're saying it's kind of like the guy goes on a bender before he goes into the treatment center, and it's like 3 days and he can't find leaving Las Vegas kind of thing,
Right.
It's like your last hurrah. Like, tell us about that, because I think you're definitely not alone in that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that I feel like after, to go on the Zepbound and go 90 days without eating, to me, the story that I have, and Mike and I were talking about this before we started recording, about how what you say and how you speak into the world is how you present, how things come back to you into the world, right? You speak your reality and you think these things in your head. And we were talking about Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson, and how he is a wonderful motivational speaker. And he talks about the thoughts that you have in your head. And then we listen to those and we believe them, and they're not true. And so I think what I have in my head is going these 90 days without eating carbs means that I'm going to have to be virtually perfect. Like I'm going to have to be perfect in me not eating the carbs. And this drive for perfection is very stressful and creates a lot of anxiety. And so before I was getting ready to jump into that area where I was going to have all this perfection and deal with anxiety, I was going to comfort and soothe myself in this unhealthy way with chemicals and sugar.
Yeah, no, that's pretty common. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean? Ton of sense. I think the bigger issue is the second part, which is how do you do it with abstinence and without chemicals and without agonists and without GLP-1? How do you do it? What's missing? The one thing that kind of had an intuition shot a few minutes ago was like, what's your connection like? Like you attend the meetings and you participate in the meetings. Do you have someone who is like ahead of you a little bit, someone who's been a success in life, but this is the one thing that have you found that? We used to call them sugar buddies. That sounds too much like drinking buddies. So we made it sugar support buddies. Like, do you have some folks like that you have an intimate relationship where you can call up and explain exactly what you just told me? Like before you do it? I think you are one of the persons, and you're not alone, all addicts do it, but you're like, you called me, like you texted me, so you didn't want to tell me that you texted me that you started it, or broke your promise, right? And, that's like any instruction to any addict. I cannot help if you do it after, you know what I mean? And so do you have those relationships that are literally 1 o'clock in the morning kind of relationships, or have you started to build those?
Well, I have to say that I don't really feel like I could call Cindy. I don't really, and I have called Cindy. She was the one that I called when I shared in one of our YouTube channels with Karen, that I called her when I was going to go out and eat carbs. And And I don't know how I didn't not go because I don't have any in the house. And I was walking around my kitchen counter to get my keys to go out in my car and go buy some carbs. And somehow I ended up calling her. And what I did when I picked up the phone was I cried. I didn't know what I was going to say or what was going to, I'm like, I got to tell Cindy I'm going to go do this. Well, when I heard her voice say hello, I just started crying. And so I know. And it was long, Mike. It was like, I'm telling you, at least like maybe even 2 minutes. I cried a long time and she just listened and it was just amazing. It was very cathartic and very helpful for me. And I did not go out and eat the carbs, but it's very hard for me to do that. I tend to feel alone a lot.
Yeah.
I don't
Look,
really
I
have
know the feeling. I do. I'm an INFJ. I'm the rarest of all introverts. And I always thought I was bugging people and still not that great at it, to be honest with you.
What does INFJ stand for?
Intuitive something judging. I forget what it is, but it's a, introversion versus extroversion scale, Myers-Briggs kind of thing.
I see.
Male INFJ is super rare.
Like you're somebody that's very intuitive about things.
Yes.
Because that's how I feel. I feel that way.
You should take it. The fact that you just said, I feel alone, and also the fact that you said when you did, maybe accidentally or on purpose, or maybe your intuition or maybe your gut feeling, had you call Cindy, and what had to happen was a release of emotions that stopped you from going out for the carbs. I'll just call it a clue, but to me, it's an answer. It's an answer to if you had that, and if you have those relationships, then you're golden because you can continue to do that. And you have to realize that Cindy got more benefit out of those 2 minutes than you got. And that's what the part that, I have to preach what I need to learn kind of stuff is you end up like helping the person who's helping you just by her silence.
Okay. So here comes some tears. So when I was 8 years old, so I have always felt like I'm alone.
I don't want to get all memey on you, but the opposite of addiction is connection, right? And it truly is, and it really is. And I know that feeling. I used to say this all the time. I felt like an alien in my own family. Genuine. Like I just was different for some way. I felt that way. Maybe it wasn't true, but it felt that.
But yeah, so I just had a birthday and I had like 18 people. I kid you not. Because on Facebook, it says it's so-and-so's birthday. So I have a lot of friends that are on, I don't really go on Facebook that much, but I had so many people. I kept looking at my phone and there'd be like 7 texts. And then I'd look at my phone, there'd be 8 texts. And then I look at my phone and all these people wishing me happy birthday. And I do feel connected to a lot of people, but I don't feel connected in an intimate way because if I ask somebody, hey, can you be there for me when I get this way and I might need to call you at 1:00 in the morning, I have people in my life that would say, yes, I'll be there for you. But that's not the problem. The problem is for me to be there.
Yes.
For myself. The problem is for me to be willing to reach out. That's where the problem comes.
What you're describing is the work. Okay. What you're describing is the bicep exercise. This is the work. How do you build that muscle? Like, how do you build that muscle, that reaching out muscle to get out of your isolation, to get out of your funk or whatever it is, whatever's bothering you, whatever's coming up, whatever you're feeling.
That's a tough one for me. It's a
really hard one.
It shows weakness to me. It feels like it would show weakness. And in my household, you did not show weakness because you wouldn't survive.
I know the feeling. That's exactly right.
I mean, you could survive, but you wouldn't get love.
Yeah. So, we're right on top of it. A lot of times, I blame my mother. People of higher intellect, there's a saying that, there's a lot of people that are too smart to recover. Then there's a lot of people, there's nobody too dumb too dumb to recover. You know what I mean? This terminal uniqueness.
Too sick to recover.
Yeah. Like you gotta, I'm just a garden variety addict. You know what I mean? I'm just whatever. And that humility, that touch of humility, that touch of fear that you got to walk through, the exercising, the reaching out stuff. I mean, think about how powerful that 2 minute of crying, that interaction was that day. It stopped you. It stopped you from going and doing what you were going to do. And that can go on every day. You can have 5 of those people, 10 of those people. You can make 3 phone calls, and if the first 2 don't answer, and yeah.
But, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say that I'm very reluctant to do that. I don't know how that happened. See, I was vulnerable enough, I think. Because like when you texted me, when I said something, I'm struggling, and you said, you can text me before you go out to eat, text me before you binge, or text me before you do, I think it was binge. And then I answered back and I said, well, if I text you, I'm not going to binge. LOL.
And you know this.
Because as soon as I reach out to somebody, that means the decision's already been made that I'm not going to do it. Because once I decide I'm going to do it, and see, that's what happened with the phone call with Cindy. I decided I was going to do it.
Yeah.
I was going to do it. And then once that decision is made, my whole psyche changes, and it goes into this place where I'm sneaky, and it's almost like evil kind of feel like, and like I'm going to get my relief, and the whole addict part of it, and the excitement about it, and the drama and all that. And somehow if I'm able to pick up the phone and call somebody, I've already gotten myself out of that place. You see what I'm saying? Like I've already made the decision. I'm going to call some.
I get it. I mean, I get it a little bit, but
I mean, is that not true? Like, I guess.
Well, even if it's just a reinforcement or a positive, but I think there was a catharsis. I think there was feelings welling. Whether or not they're attached to the phone call is not relative. It's just that they came, as opposed to numbing them. They came, and if you'd already made the decision, consciously or unconsciously, those logistics don't matter really. You did you followed through and made the phone call, and then maybe it was just a positive reinforcement or a reinforcement of sorts. That's cool. It doesn't matter where it lies in the system or the progression of things, So it worked, and it could continue to work over and over again, And the drugs, again, they are going to affect your mental, and it may help. It may help, like a Suboxone, get you over a hump. But I think you still have to do the work. And here's the big question, and these things always come up in this type of processing, good for me and good for you, is the real magic of these GLP-1s, not the frozen stomach and not the inability to not eat and all that, but it is what they're calling now just a side effect or a side benefit, that people drink less or stop drinking or stop gambling. Is it in the mind? And are you just going to be ingesting another drug that is like a sugar or caffeine, that's going to, and then when you get to the other side, you still have the same processing work to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a huge question that's left unanswered.
Well, and it could be like effort-based dopamine versus
substance-based
dopamine, right? Because we don't even understand completely. GLP-1 is in the brain, and we don't understand completely how it works in the brain. And it's starting to look like it works on dopamine and some other things up in there in the brain. And so am I going to get my dopamine? Because I really feel like my dopamine system is...
all addicts are downregulated. They all start
downregulated
at a lower baseline, for sure.
Right. And so if I get my dopamine levels to a healthier level through the 90 days of no carbs, then when I go off, is it going to be like back to where I was, or am I going to be able to maintain no binging because my dopamine levels are in better shape?
Well, will they be in better shape? Could they be in worse shape from this product? Could that again be the main benefit that everyone is missing? Like everyone is missing the main benefit of sugar abstinence. It's not no diabetes. It's not weight loss. It's not all that. It's that your mental capacity returns and you make wiser decisions and you feel better, period. Your dopamine your dopamine receptors are not down-regulated, thinned out, beat up, bloodied. They're healing and building new neural pathways that involve exercise and meditation and prayer and hugging and sunsets and such. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's the big question in this, slight deviation into GLP-1s is like, are you taking a brain reward chemical that will just leave you in the same place? Like I said, the people who get off the product, I think it's like 51% or more maybe now, gain all the weight back just like any diet because they don't solve this addiction self-soothing issue. They don't solve the work of...
They don't do the work.
Yeah, they don't do the work of feeling the emotions. And it's nasty sometimes. If I could describe what I call the dark night of the soul, I mean, it was almost like I was in shock for 3 or 4 months. It was like, because I had never felt anything after alcohol, drugs, sugar, and relationships and whatever. And when I was bare to the world, had I not had a support, not one support group, but 5 different types of supports and a million support people, I never would have made it. Never, not a million years. It was accidental, I believe, that I made it back then before this, The Body Keeps the Score, kind of Gabor Mate, Bruce Perry and Oprah books. These things didn't exist then. And, you're here like on the precipice of this work, and you've done a lot of it through your alcohol recovery. Mm-hmm. But in our program, we have a lot of recovering people who just substitute the sugar and end up in a worse, just as bad a place with extra 50 pounds. So I don't know the answer here, really. I mean, I do know the answer, but I'm trying to let you I think I know the answer. And I'm trying to hopefully you could come to that answer. I think we've narrowed it down, hopefully. Is the GLP-1 mental and emotional salve or placator, whatever the hell you want to call it, like the caffeine and the sugar and the binges? Or is it just something like a diet pill or a diet shake? You know what I mean? That's just going to theoretically make you go poop a lot or whatever. You know what I mean? Is it a physical or a mental and emotional thing?
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that, work has to be done. I have to be willing to do some work. And what comes to mind, for me is where I've seen some growth, and I know that I could do a lot more growing in the areas of paying attention to my feelings and really processing them as they come. Because forever I was a people pleaser, and my job would be, even in the family growing up with 7 kids, my job was to kind of keep everybody copacetic and, I planned all the parties and you bring this and you bring this and we show up here and we do this and that. And I was the one who kind of ran everything to keep everybody together. And I've noticed that even in my relationships now, like with my girlfriends from medical school, I'm the one that kind of gets them together. And my group of high school girlfriends from the swim team, I'm the one that kind of helps organize and start off, like, when are we going to get together again? And what are we going to do? And all those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and that kind of comes along to being in connection and staying in connection, but that's also like people pleasing in some ways. And, just trying to sort out like what means what and pay attention to my emotions and my feelings as opposed to, just getting rid of my hunger.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not like in this circumstance that you're at risk of having a fentanyl or dying after a binge, likely. And so
I'm pretty sick metabolically.
Well, yeah, but it's not going to happen like in one evening, is what I'm saying. And
massive MI, a massive heart attack, and I can be fine.
Well, I'm glad you're saying it this way because there is some reality to that. But I think that even slips back and forth. I don't know. I just think that we're coming upon the answers. Hopefully they're registering, and we're coming around to, will you have to do the work later, and why not do it now, kind of thing anyway. And I don't, we're all in new territory with these agonists. We're all in new territory with the GLP-1s.
Yeah. So there's a lot of food for thought there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think we've done really good stuff here. I mean, I do believe that. I think we've
Yeah.
really got a lot of progress forward. But what are your feelings now after we've chatted? And what do you think is, the next steps for you in all this?
I don't know. Part of me feels like it is definitely a crutch that I'm using, and that, getting me to 90 days without a binge, if that's my goal, then yeah, I can achieve that goal. But then what? You know? So I'm hoping that I can really be willing to do the work and be vulnerable and, get some of my food buddies, closer to really being willing to work a program. I know that there's some people that, you can work a 12-step program through the food process too. And I actually have a group that I meet with on Mondays, and we read through the big book, but relative to food. And so that's really been helpful and interesting. You change it out, for the alcohol, for the food. And I had her as a sponsor, but then she wanted me to be eating, a plate with 3 different foods on it and 3 different, she couldn't handle the carnivore aspect of it. So I do have a meeting tonight with Kelly Hogan's group, and I'm thinking that if I look more into a carnivore, get more involved in the carnivore community, I might be able to find someone who could relate to the carnivore and to the addiction piece and be somebody like that I could really be
So
vulnerable with.
there is a kind of a tangential thought here in that, my good friend Bitten there believes that what I describe in this work of the emotional reconfiguring and finding new ways of self-soothing must be predated by the biochemical repair of eating, more animal-based products, whether it's keto or carnivore. And I can't disagree with that. I think it needs to be done simultaneously because the emotional stuff can come up right away, as you're experiencing right now. You get to 2 or 3 weeks and you just can't handle, even though you're eating well and that diet is helping the biochemical repair. So again, I think we're all in new territory as far as, I don't think there's a strict way to do it, but I do know that, I mean, I'm trying not to judge the GLP-1 stuff, but I really want to see if you could go a little further each time. And look, I'm here. I'm genuinely here. Like until we get new friends or people, just pick up the phone before the binge. You know what I mean? I don't look. I used to go to crack houses to help guys out. I mean, I've had the phone ring all night, different nights, different guys, different gals, different thing. And it was at one point, the first decade of my recovery, that was what we did. It was the tightest community I loved it. I actually did. I enjoyed it. And I don't have any problem with that. So I'm trying not to give you an excuse. I'm trying not to give you an out. I will take the phone calls at any hour of any day, Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't matter. You got my phone number and let's give it a whirl, And then it's like abstinence. You can always go to the 7-Eleven. Let's just try it. Let's get you 90 days, I just love seeing people succeed. It's just fun.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Please do it. And look, it's not a burden. Again, you would be helping me more than I'd be helping you, genuinely. And I'd be more excited about the call than you would be nervous about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because that I knew you did that one push-up or you did that. Now, hopefully then you'll do your second push-up and eventually you'll just pick up the phone and call anybody and you'll process this stuff through.
And I could see that happening. I have to believe that will happen, that, I'll pick up the phone before it happens because, it used to be that I would binge on sugar and, 3 days later I would be like, oh, I wonder why I did that. And then it got to be the day after, and then it got to be, during, and then it got to be where I could even figure out why I was going to go binge because something happened that made me upset, and I knew what it was, and I went and had a sugar binge. And then I got to the point where I could call my girlfriends. I remember calling my girlfriend once after I had gone to the gym and something happened there that upset me a little bit. And I called her up and she said 2 words. She said, "What happened?" And I remembered exactly. And then I knew I was upset because I was afraid that there was some jealousy and abandonment issues because my girlfriend brought her friend to the gym. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be abandoned. She's not going to want to work out with me anymore. And all these crazy things that aren't even true that probably go back to when, I was at the fair and my family lost me and the cop said, well, we'll take care of you. And I thought he was going to haul me off to jail, crazy things like that.
Mm.
So, yeah, that was, and I didn't go to McDonald's to get whatever. So yeah, it's progress, not perfection, right?
It is. And, you're making a lot of progress. So none of us are perfect. So don't worry about that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You and I lived through the fen thing. We've lived through, back when we were in college, I had roommates. They were female roommates, and they, as long as the doctor, if they could get a squeeze, or whatever, he'd prescribe any kind of speed you wanted, and that didn't end well either. And I'm not sure. It's like, I tell that story. I don't know if you've probably heard it, but it might be good for the audience. So you're going to a concert, right? And you got a little pot and a little beer and a little tequila and a little cocaine and a little acid, like, what's the goal? The goal is not to be good when the warm-up band comes on. The goal is at 9:30 or 10 o'clock when the main band comes on that you've ingested enough of this and a little of that and enough of this and a little of that so that you are perfect. You feel perfect. You're like, and this is what the modern society is doing with the sugar, the flour, the caffeine, the GLP-1,
absolutely,
the alcohol. They're like managing how they feel through the day. You can't drink 4 cups of coffee going to that meeting. You look like an idiot. But if you don't have one, you're not going to be able to talk. It's just like, and
that sweet spot.
That sweet spot that you're looking for. And question, I think that, honestly, I think it was one of the biggest revelations I've ever had in this work is the GLP-1 just another one of them? Mm-hmm. Mental, emotional. Like, is it playing with the dopamine enough to calm you down a little bit, long enough to, whatever. So, and the research that's coming out says when they get off it, they go right back because they didn't fix the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be working on fixing the problem here and we'll see. We'll check in next week.
Can we make one commitment that you will call me before?
Yes, I will commit to that.
And if I can pick up, I'm not in the middle of the Zoom meeting with somebody else, and I'll pick up the phone, I swear to you.
That's the last thing you need to do is pick up the phone and someone's going,
no, it's not. It's not. It's cool. I mean, I like it.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for sticking around for this episode, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate everything you do for me.
Well, thank you. Take care. Keep up the good work.
Thanks. Bye.